11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
2A New Media. We'll talk behind the scenes of 2A Media, so grab a camera, microphone, your keyboard, or a phone, and join in the creation of 2A Media Online. We'll be talking nuts and bolts, give some tips and tricks, as well as discussing software, online platforms, how to network, finance, and have fun with your 2A projects.
And welcome everybody to our daily gun show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about different things each day. On Mondays, we talk about the how to create content, how to use the software, the tools, the cameras, the phones, the microphones, the software, the streaming services, the social platforms, how to do all that stuff that people might be involved in, and how to stay motivated, how to set goals, how to deal with the ups and downs. And we bring people on, ideally, each week to give them a chance to chat. We can pick their brains. We do this live. If I thought I had screen shared here. So if you're watching this live, or if you're joining us live tonight, you can see that we devote about a third to a quarter of the screen each night to the live conversations. I'm wiggling it right now. And feel free to participate as we chat. Tonight we have on with us Gizzard, or Gary, from Kansas. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's see. I'm assuming people that are watching live are familiar with the Gizzard Gary channel on YouTube and the projects that you've hosted or produced or done now for years. But I guess if you don't mind putting you on the spot, would you mind giving us, what would you give an elevator speech if you were at a industry event, so people were comfortable with the whole gun thing, kind of figured you were something because you got a media badge on? How do you describe what you do, what you've done?
Well, what I do is multifaceted. I do guns and gear reviews, typically from the perspective of someone who is perhaps older in age, or just coming into, as I am, the firearms life, where I haven't had stuff like that all my life, so I'm learning right along with everybody else. But also I'll say also 2A advocacy, activism, and live discussion is probably the meat and potatoes of my channel. I host 2 live streams each week, Fowl Territory every Friday night at 9 p.m. Central, and then that is a panel-driven discussion. And then there is the early bird chat on Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock a.m., which is basically an open forum, kind of as close to the old-fashioned open lobby as you could get, where we try to concentrate primarily on guns and 2A discussion, but we also invite other topics as they come up. It's more relaxed, not subject driven in any way, shape, or form. Just a place for people to hang out on Sundays. So,
Right on. I appreciate that, and that was pretty succinct. How many times do you think you've given that explanation, that elevator speech?
Well, in an abbreviated form, probably many times when I introduce myself to, people at SHOT Show and stuff like that. Obviously, you don't have 2 or 3 minutes to do the whole spiel a lot of times. But there have been occasions where I've been interviewed or been a guest on somebody's show, and they want me to, basically say, what do you do? What's your channel about, and stuff like that. So it's basically an expanded summary of what is on my YouTube channel page, which I believe you had a copy of it one time, but I don't happen to have up on my screen right at the moment, but it's just a short statement given those same things. So
I don't think I can make it. Basically, the thumbnails is what we're talking about, like the thumbnail I used for this.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't make it
something
come
very
back.
similar to that. That's fine.
But yeah, it's just I think it was from one of your channels. Something I found it somewhere, just copied it. But
I mean,
okay.
I was going to say, if you look at my reviews, if I do anything up to budget firearms like Tauruses and stuff like that, because a lot of people are interested in stuff like that. But I also happen to carry, I carry a 6 Sauer P365. I've carried a Glock, so it's not as if I haven't ventured into the slightly more expensive variety of firearms. I own an AR and have shot it and love it. So I'm trying to get new experiences under my belt, also getting into knives a little bit the last couple of years or so. So trying to expand my horizons and remain relevant. But like I say, most of my content you're going to find are live streams, and that's my stock in trade, if you will.
Right on. So I really appreciate that. Like I say, I'm going to try to start making not necessarily just this show, but the Daily Gun Show in general, a forum for my interview series again. So I thank you for jumping on so late. I think I said that off air, so let me say it on air. We record this live at midnight Eastern. So I've debated going back and forth on that, but I am going to leave it at midnight Eastern. One, because I'm lazy. My branding is already at midnight Eastern. But two, I like being up this late. I am naturally up in the middle of the night. I've had jobs that are in the middle of the night. I like people that are up in the middle of the night, and I like giving something live for the people that are up at night. But there's a little bit something you get where, one, people are devoted to showing up on the show because they're willing to stay up all night. But then I don't want to say you get them off guard, but you get them a little bit more natural because unlike when they're inebriated or maybe same kind of concepts when you're brand new in the morning before you had some coffee, you get a little bit different version of the person because they're probably a little sleepy unless they're a night person. So I do appreciate you sticking up and being also kind of a initial season 2 guest on the interview series here. So I'm prefacing all that because I'm going to kind of conduct this like I would my interview, and my interview style is, at least I created this interview process or style, I don't know what to call it, after seeing that there's a ton of people already doing interview shows, and I don't need to emulate that or just do what other people are doing. So when I have people on my interviews, if you go back and watch them on the channel, I ask 3 questions: who or what, like you're doing. I mean, Gary just did a great summary of what he's been doing. We'll dive a little bit into that, but then the second question I'll ask is why, because that's the question I really am curious about. Why? Because I only interview people that are valid, that are doing authentic stuff, and that have done it for a while, put some time on the clock. So the why is super interesting to me. Not that there's any right or wrong. Obviously, everybody's why, and it might change, right? But I'm curious about the why, because usually when someone's on as a guest, they get 10 minutes to describe their stuff, and then maybe they're talking about news of the day or something else. So you're there to contribute to some other show. We're here to talk about content creation and your perspective on it. And then after why, how. And I'm assuming we're probably going to talk more about how, because I've known Gary for a long time, and I kind of know all these other things. So as much as you want to expand on the why, but I do have some questions about how. But before we get into all that, as part of this what part, I wanted to go back and give Gary an opportunity, so I'm not hogging too much of the show. You kind of, in the description of your show, described your long format conversations that you host as being, I think, reminiscent or like the old gun channels lobby chats. So without me describing that, could you take a second and describe what those lobby chats were, or what you meant by, what you're referencing?
Well, when I first joined gun channels back in, I believe it was 2017, about 5 years ago, one of the features on the main page of the gun channels page was the open lobby, which was usually always going pretty much 24 hours a day, at least in the beginning. And it was something where somebody primarily usually Mr. Knives, sometimes other people would just open up a live stream and it would sit there and run until people would join. And as a new person, if you want to get into here, you've watched all these videos and seen these live streams, but you didn't know what it's like to be in one. Well, here's an opportunity for anyone to jump in and get their feet wet and see what it's like to talk to somebody live on a computer like that. And then you also had the opportunity to answer and ask questions. You go because you're new. You're probably new to the gun game. In my case, a lot of people weren't when they came into gun channels. I was. What kind of gun do you have? Where do you carry? Why do you carry? Blah, blah, blah. And you get to learn a lot about other people in those. Plus, you get to feeling comfortable with talking to people online. And after a while, you get encouraged to, pick up the camera, pick up the mic, and go live yourself. And so it's just a place to get familiar, get friendly, and meet new people. And I met a lot of the people I know today still, people like Clovertech, people like Midnight Range TM, Outlaw Hatfield and stuff. I met them on lobby chats, Ghost Tactical. Friendships that have went on for years and years and years, but were started right there on gun channels, mostly in the lobby chats and stuff like that. So it's a great way to mingle and get to learn, get to know people and get to be comfortable being part of the group. So it's invaluable to be able to just talk with people, network. A lot of people, believe it or not, get starstruck when they get on lobbies and stuff like that. Well, I've never been on a live show. What do I say? What do I do? Well, you just talk, basically. So that's it in a nutshell for me.
Right on. I appreciate again that you let me put you on the spot, and then have for doing such a great, succinct definition of it. That's how I remember it as well, or the lobby chats, I guess. I'll just throw in there that one of the things I value about them, in addition to all the things you brought up there, is that, like you kind of alluded to before, I think when you were first describing them, while the focus is on guns and Second Amendment stuff, sometimes it's not like you bring any kind of like talking points or bullet points, I guess I should call them, or like even parameters at all, other than being civil to each other, right? Not being weird. And then I guess on your Sunday chat, it's a little more PG than it would be on the Friday night chat, which is one reason you have two different chats, I suppose. But the idea that when people show up, if we're talking about donuts or we're talking about what's the difference between two different kind of shooting sports, or what somebody's hunting, or what somebody's wife is up to, or something, that they need help with on maybe a car problem or something, right? Like, it's sort of like when you're at a shooting range, or if you're at a little bit less like the gun shop, because usually you're not going to hang out and talk about your car problems right in the gun shop, but maybe in the parking lot of the gun shop. But definitely like a shooting range where you're there to shoot, and you're shooting, and you're even like literally shooting, but you might be talking about your friend's wife's car because you have this other thing that you're talking about, or, the food or guitars or any other number of subjects, but you're there shooting. And that's sort of what the lobbies are like. We're there chatting about guns, and as soon as somebody brings a gun question up, other layers to it, other elements where that novices and experts are there together, and it's kind of a random mix, or at least a variety, and a novice can get more than one opinion. And as a person who's been around the block a few times, it's definitely interesting to see the evolution of questions or answers that show up, or the types of answers that show up. And that part, getting people together, you rarely get that, because people's tendency is to hang out with their friends when they go to the range or someplace. Your tendency is to go to the places you want at the gun shop, or go to the gun stores that you want to, where the lobbies brought people together, again, more like a shooting range, where you're there for the opportunity to chat, and who shows up is kind of the random, is kind of the, let's see what's happening. Now, is that, I guess, part of the motivation? Do you enjoy that part, or is that a part you or less interest, or that you desire less than the other aspects?
Oh, I think all of it's welcome. The fact that there's no particular pressure to do this or that on the early bird chat. In fact, the fact that it is a 4-hour show pretty much tells people I don't have to fit what I have to say in a 5-minute window and then I'm done. You can take your time to not only ask questions but answer them and tell us what's on your mind. What do you want to know and stuff like that. And we got time to answer those questions. So it's kind of like your analogy of being in the range versus, if you only have 30 minutes, you're going to concentrate on the one gun you took in there and that's it. You're going to shoot it, wipe it off, put it away, and you're done. Whereas if you've got an hour or two, you can maybe take 2 or 3 different guns. Maybe you could shoot your friend's gun who come with you and stuff like that and learn new stuff. So the fact that there's no particular, you have to just talk about this and you only have so many minutes to speak, I think takes a lot of the pressure off people. So they can not only talk about their gun questions, which most of them have gun questions or something, an opinion maybe they want to share, and we can discuss that too. But, if the discussion turns to what are you going to do the rest of the day, or even the unavoidable, what did you have for breakfast stuff? Well, when you're in a 4-hour show with people and friends, the discussion turns many different directions. Every Sunday morning, every early bird chat's different. Some are a lot of serious driven discussions. Other times it's just an awful lot of small talk and chatter. It's whatever the audience, whatever the panel decides to drive it, as long as it, as you said, stays in a civil, manner that's appropriate for discussion. And I say that because over time I have had people bring their children and put them in front of the camera to say hi and stuff like that. I don't want them hearing, overt profanity, weird stuff like that. That's not appropriate. I want it to be a place where anybody of any age could come in there and enjoy it, not be offended, and just feel welcome. So.
And just a caveat that we're saying that for some reason, although, knock on wood, the instances of there ever been anything weird or mean or anything is probably like a dozen times in the years you've been doing it. If it's a dozen times,
if that, yeah.
All right. So we're not talking, we're just clarifying that it's one of the characteristics of it. It's not as though that's policed or needs to be dealt with.
No, I think people just know. I don't have to coach people generally.
No, exactly. The people that show
they
up
just know
the conversation, and the folks that are looking for something crazier just move on and don't really.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, so
right. It's probably not for everybody. So
I've been we've got a little time. I figured I'd keep Gizzard up for an hour. So we have a little time here. So again, I encourage the people that are watching live. Woods has already asked a couple of questions. If anybody has questions, feel free to ask them. Sure. But again, I'm trying to get through the major segments of what, why, and how. And I guess I'll do this next one for the how, even though it's kind of, we were just talking about it. But unless you'd like to dig in or just address something else or finish something, let me get to that next question of why. And please take as much time as you'd like. I'm leaving it open. But why do you, after this much time, I guess, did we mention when you started all this? How many episodes are you on now?
I believe I started doing this full time. Was it 2019? At the end of 2018, I had done a handful, let's say less than 10, what I called Fowl Territory, just kind of a play on the channel name. And I had done some live streams just to see what it was like, and found out that people watched and stuff like that. Then at the end of 2018, you made a call out to everybody that you wanted to get some people on a daily schedule for that next year, and wanted to know who would be available to do a regular live show. And so I put my name in the hat to do Fowl Territory, and I thought Friday night after dinner would probably be a good time for it. Start of the weekend. My very first time I ever went live with Fowl Territory was on a Friday night. It was actually a Friday afternoon, but Friday seemed like a good day for me. I'm off every Friday, so it gives me time to get ready, get prepped, whatever I need to do. So I signed up for it. And then after I had done it 3 or 4 months, I just happened to be up early one Sunday morning. For some reason, sometimes you just wake up early, and I was bored. And so I went on with a stream, and I just put a name up, called it Early Bird Chat, and intended to maybe be on an hour or so. Well, there were a bunch of people jumped on there, and they seemed to really enjoy it. So I went probably 2 or 3 hours that day, and it evolved. It started out as a 3-hour show, eventually expanded it to a 4th hour. But any time that I can't do it, like when I'm at Wanamaker and stuff, I have people tell me, boy, I sure missed you having your show. I can't wait till you're back on doing it and stuff like that. So I have people telling me that they look forward to it and stuff like that. So, it's something I enjoy doing. Is it a grind sometimes? There's that portion of it too. You've got to be ready to go every Sunday. And so don't make any extended plans to go anywhere because you've got an appointment set up there. But on the other hand, it's a time I can get together with my friends. Once I get on the air, I'm always generally comfortable. Okay, I'm in my element. I'm ready to go and stuff like that. And it's an opportunity for people to come together. And some people can't make the Friday night chats, for example. They've got other things or other obligations they're doing. But Sunday's a good time for them. So, and a lot of people on the Sunday show don't even watch. They put it on so they can listen, and they're out in their garage doing this or that, or have it in their car while they're going somewhere, perhaps driving. So
I didn't want to interrupt you there because you kind of were going, and that's the whole point, is to let you riff. But I was asking, it was still in the middle of asking the why, but I was prefacing it with the why, what motivates, like what's the why behind the Gizzard Gary projects after, and I didn't know how many years, but I just went and looked while you were talking to Early Bird number 134 and Fowl Territory number 170. So missing a week or two here and there, that many weeks of 2+ hours on a Friday, 4+ hours, whatever, on a Sunday, every Sunday, like you say, moving things around. You've got family, you've got other things going on in your world, work and everything else, going to shows and doing, other things you're doing. So what's the why? I'm going to leave it as open-ended as possible, and we can take as much time as you'd like. I don't know if you've ever put much thought to it. I'll shut up. What's the why?
Well, the why obviously started out from watching other people's live streams. I saw other people doing it, and actually it was John Z, believe it or not. I didn't know how to go live back then, and he showed me how to do that in Google Hangouts and how to set up a live stream and how to have guests and all that stuff. So after he showed me that, then it's like, well, I wonder what would happen if I went live. Would anybody watch? Would anybody enjoy it? So I went live for that first time. Like I said, it was on a Friday afternoon around 5:00 p.m., which is drive time for a lot of people going home and stuff like that. And I was amazed when I looked out and I saw I had, real quickly, 5-6 viewers, and then it was 10, 15, all the way up to 20. And it's like, wow, people actually want to see a live stream that I'm hosting and stuff like that, and people actually had a good time and stuff like that. So from that point on, I did it occasionally, and always enjoyed doing it, but it wasn't anything that I had scheduled. So, and I kind of touched on why I went ahead and jumped into the weekly fray, just to, be part of. I wanted to be part of the scheduled programming for what was then Gun Channels, a regular show. I thought I was up to it. I thought maybe I would have something to contribute, much like your Clover Tax and your Ghost Tacticals and everybody else who was live streaming, you with the Daily Gun Show and stuff like that, but not to try to copy anybody. And so I decided long into it, do my own style, be me and stuff like that. But that's why I got started, why I continue to do it. Well, obviously I enjoy it. If the time comes that this isn't any fun anymore, I don't want to do it, then I'm sorry, I'll just have to walk away. But I haven't gotten to that point yet. Like I say, does it occasionally take a little bit of motivation to get me going? Yeah, it does. But I mean, I enjoy it. There's a certain, the focus is on me. This is my show. What I create here, goes out in front of everybody. We're talking Fowl Territory, an audience of, anywhere from 100 to 200 people every Friday. And then the early bird chat's usually a tad more than that. But it's, it's my show. This is my creation. Yes, it's discussion driven. A lot of times the panelists, in the case of Fowl Territory, help make the show. But the guests also, with their text chats and stuff like that, a lot of times I try to involve them in the show too, which is, part of the reason I started doing the giveaways and stuff like that. It encourages audience participation. It makes it fun for them. So they'll come and they'll enjoy. And also, they pick up a little bit of stuff, but most of the time it's just, it's a way to get people in. And I just enjoy all the people who come in. It's kind of like being in a room with all your friends every week, and you get to talk to them. Whichever ones want to come over and sit at your table, it's like, okay, let's talk. Let's have some fun discussion and stuff like that. And I try to keep it lighthearted and fun for the most part, but we do get serious too. But that's why, because I enjoy it. I mean, primarily. And there's a little bit of, I enjoy the spotlight, but I don't consider myself a star. I consider myself more of a ringleader. I'm the people who get them in there to talk, and then they perform for the most part. People don't come to the early bird chat to hear me. People come to the early bird chat to talk to each other and stuff like that, because it's not about me being on a soapbox. Most of the time, it's about, okay, let's discuss stuff. Let's check out everybody's attitude. Let's talk about this. So I enjoy that aspect of, being the host and having people feel comfortable.
Right on. So I didn't want to interrupt or anything. I appreciate that. That was a great answer. Again, putting you on the spot. Give me a little bit of heads up that the question was coming, but obviously I didn't tell them ahead of time. When I email people to ask them, or I guess I just asked you probably. I don't get heads up or anything. I probably will if it's somebody who I don't know. I had a couple of questions that I didn't want to interrupt, and I'm going to try to not put them up in the order I came up with them. Are you more of a bartender or a bus driver or something else? I don't know if bus driver is the best word. I mean, bartender, I think. I could see you considering yourself a bartender, or I guess bus driver in the respects that, like, you're facilitating the vehicle, and then you don't know who's coming and what they're going and when they're coming on and off. So that's why I use bus driver. But I guess the idea is, I guess maybe another way to say it is, are people coming to hang out at your bar, or are you driving the bus and enjoying the route and who's coming on and off? Or is that a bad question? Or is there a better way to describe that you think of it?
Well, it depends on the show. Like I say, it's a little bit different with Fowl Territory. I typically have my core group of people who are on most shows. I think everybody knows that, and then it's it's pretty much for patrons and stuff like that, but primarily it's friends and stuff like that. But I try to have interesting guests, people I know have knowledgeable and good opinions on stuff like that and can make good judgments and stuff like that. But they also, I think people come in there to hear the banter, to hear us make fun of, for example, the silly thing that the gun snob said or something. That's just part of the entertainment, part of the show. But people feel comfortable doing that there. But it's more come watch and come comment on what discussion's going on the screen. Whereas on the early bird chat, you can be on the screen if you want to, and you can be part of the show. It's actually just as much your show as it is mine. In that case, I'm driving a bus for 100% certain. I'll stop and pick up whoever's on the side of the road, and we'll talk. So, like I say, a little bit different feel for both shows, but we try to entertain. We try to involve the audience. Sometimes if I don't have a topic of discussion, I'll query the audience, what do you want to talk about? And most of the time they'll throw something out there, and it's just a good discussion. Yeah.
Right
Now,
on. Yeah, I didn't think of it
he's
that way.
saying just the opposite. He thinks I'm a bus driver on Friday and a bartender on Sunday. Okay. Depends on how you look at it.
For sure. And I don't know what even, I kind of, again, I'm trying to leave questions out there that are a little bit open-ended so you can interpret them. And the way that you answered it, I think, at least for me, I did work. I just kind of set you up and you were able to take it in an enlightening way. I never even really thought of it until the way you described it there, that each of the shows, I knew they had a different flavor, but now I hear what you're saying. I never even paid attention to, I guess, one of them, you send the links to Patreons, and the other
primarily. Now, occasionally we do have a guest that's not a patron, but primarily, yes.
Oh, that makes perfect sense too. And so then the next question, you said something that, people don't show up to hear what you're saying, but I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, you're not on a pulpit, you're not on like a microphone, like what do they call that? Where you're not trying to one up everybody. You know what I mean? It's not like the Gizzard show and his guests. You create a place where people can hang out and whatever. But I guess they may, while I agree, they're probably not showing up to hear Gizzard's opinion on everything that's brought up. They're there to create. They're there to experience and participate in what is the result of the environment you created. I mean, you don't script it, and you don't say, I'm inviting these 4 people today so that this happens, or, something like that. But, you create this environment, and over time, I want to say just the people that show up, we self-police. So if somebody comes in who's completely, let's just say, off the wall, is extreme in one direction or something, they're not going to get, I don't know, what I mean? They're not going to get shunned, but they're not going to figure out that people aren't going to, answer their weird questions about, I don't know, 1970s TVs or something. We're there to talk about guns. But so because that environment's there and you don't have to really put down rules, I think that's why, at least for me, I think that's one of the reasons people show up. And don't you take credit for that? I mean, you create that environment. I mean, it's not like you lay down law, but you facilitate that environment.
Right. I mean, I try to, especially on the early bird chat, I facilitate discussion of about everything. Now, if it does get to the point of being mundane, or they ask what I would think inappropriate questions, I will. If the moderators don't take care of anything, it's really inappropriate, which they do. That's a nice thing about having a lot of moderators at any given show. I very seldom have to moderate the chat because my mods take care of it for me. But occasionally,
extreme weird links that a spam bot is dropping, so that it's not just like a minefield of weirdness, but it's not like somebody with a differing opinion gets pushed away. It's just that you don't create like a, hey, let's argue every Sunday morning, or let's bicker about everything endlessly, right? Like it's more like, hey, let's just chat, offer some insight, laugh a little, learn something, keep going.
Right. And I do try to keep away from, I don't know, some of this. I'm not a big fan of the sky is falling philosophy that a lot of channels, that's their stock, and that's fine, but that's not me. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist or anything like that, so I don't really like discussing things like that, and I think people know that. Also, anything that's really heated political discussions about, this person ought to be, this particular person in public office ought to be taken out and, tarred and feathered and stuff like that. I try to avoid anything like that that could cause, of course, YouTube sanctions and stuff like that. We try to avoid that and, keep the discussion civil. I mean, not that you can't criticize people, you certainly can, and a lot of them deserve it, let's be real. But I think you've got to, sometimes maybe check the emotions a little bit and come into it is, the nuts and bolts, why this person's wrong and why they should be this way and stuff like that. So it's not that you can't touch on those topics, but you got to watch how you drive it. And I will occasionally coach from the microphone, say, let's try to keep the discussion towards this, and there have been an occasion or two where it got out of hand and we've had to moderate, but it's very, very rare. Very
yeah,
rare.
I'd almost say as often as we get so far into cheesecake that it's like, hey, let's quit talking about desserts already and get back to talking about guns, because, same way, like, about as often it's, just sometimes the tangent is political, sometimes it's
right. Right. Sometimes I'll just try to steer it in the right direction, the topic change type thing. And I try to stay on top of, okay, yes, I'm here on the side and I'm not doing much talking, but if it comes time for me to jump in and lead the discussion a different direction, I'll do it. And I have, but I very rarely have to do that.
And sometimes all it takes is like, hey, Woods had a question about shotguns, and then the topic gets back on that track instead of wherever it was. And it's not like anybody had to be like stifled or disagreed with. Just like,
well, I mean, even in something like the early bird chat where we talk about anything and everything, if somebody's out there in the chat with a gun question, I almost always try to go there and explore it, because I know that we are primarily still a firearm and Pro 2A related channel, and that is our stock and trade. So we can't just not go there. We can't ignore that stuff. If it's present, if there's a question on the floor, then we should, if we can, go there, because if I'm going to call myself a 2A channel, if I'm going to call myself a firearm related channel, well, there should be some firearm discussion in there. And if that's what somebody wants to talk about, then I can't just gloss over it because we're talking about our favorite pancakes or something like that.
And again, the environment you create, nobody gets offended and it's like, come on, we're talking about pancakes. Like the environment, the conversations that are established or traditional, or you created the tradition of like, yeah, let's stop everything and talk about this. Oh man, I shouldn't have said that, because now I just totally forgot what I was about to dig into this question here, but okay, well, no, I was been not asking a question about the audience, and let me just ask it. I don't have to necessarily have to have an answer to this, but no, in trying to craft it, I don't think I'm going to be able to craft it. I guess I was going to ask you if the audience has changed, or if the over time, or if the environment you create just brings people in that aren't argumentative. And I don't know if you can answer that, because how the heck can you know? But do you want to take a stab at that? I don't know. But,
it evolves. I mean, people people leave the quote unquote community, you won't see them for a while, and then new people will come along. New subscribers, how they found you? Well, a friend of a friend told them about the channel, or perhaps like a couple, 3 times, I've been fortunate enough for somebody to give me a shout out in Yankee Marshall's channel. And he's actually, at the end of his show, directed people to come over to for example, the Friday night show. That exposes a whole ton of new people. So you've got to be prepared. Okay, these guys aren't used to the routine. So you got to entertain some questions and stuff like that. And then firearm topics change. 2A topics change from week to week. New guns. We can discuss, what's the new hot gun? 10 millimeter is now. Well, what's so great about it? Why does everybody want 10 millimeter? There's a multitude of ways you can go, and it's never the same thing every week because, like I say, the world around us changes and the people in the chat change. A lot of times you'll have somebody who say, I'm 19 years old. I just bought my first gun. Well, let's talk about that, because I've been a first-time gun owner. I know what that's like, and I wanted to feel welcome, so I want to make people feel the same way. So,
right on. Well, I appreciate you riffing on that, and it made me remember my question, or it allowed me to remember my one question. But I'm going to ask this other question because I brought my other question down. I'm going to ask this one next. Going off of that, the concept of, at least for people that don't know, haven't listened to one or showed up and been participant in one of Gary's live conversations that we're talking about, which, is a majority of what you do, but you do make videos and you have been to more industry events than most people that are creating content, and you do all kinds of different things. You participate in all kinds of things in the community and more. So we've been talking about this. But if people that might not have watched one of your chats or whatever, you don't say we're opening, except for, I guess, on your Friday show, you do have a segment or two that are kind of consistent, but you don't say like, hey, and I guess maybe a third. And I didn't think about what you learned, which is a neat one. But since you don't have segments, or you don't say like we talk about revolvers first and then we talk about shotguns, you don't have some procedure. Is that intentional that you have no fixed topics, or is it just a happenstance of the way it went, or do you intentionally not structure it?
Well, sometimes we do. Sometimes we do. We've had theme shows. For example, 9/11. I've done 2 or 3 9/11 shows. Those are always great. When we talk about people's remembrance of 9/11, or Christmas time, there's usually always discussion of Black Friday sales and stuff like that. Occasionally, I'll say we're going to talk primarily about revolvers, and we usually always maybe start the show with the primary topic or two. If there have been news stories in the events, I've tried covering those. The only problem is a lot of that stuff is overdone. By the time I get around to covering them, it's hard for me to be cutting edge and discuss something that half a dozen channels haven't already covered on their shows. And I don't want to copy people or bore them with the same discussion that everybody's having on their shows. So I try to keep it open, but it is easier to run a show if you have a primary focal topic. But sometimes it's just hard to rack your brain and come up with, what are we going to talk about? And if I can't come up with anything, which is the majority of the time, then we'll just see. I try to, especially on Fowl Territory, the first half of the show is supposed to be intentional discussion of topics, either new guns that people have bought or stories in the news. We'll bounce around whatever the panelists have on their minds to talk about. We'll talk about those. And then the second half is more of a, let's look at Gorn, for example, or, let people get their plugs in and stuff like that. It becomes more of a free form at that point. So It depends on the show. Sometimes we try to get real dog serious and talk about stuff, and we have hashed some serious topics on the show. So it's a little bit of both, depending on what's going on.
And then just to follow up on that, do you get any feedback on that element or that or is it just something you prefer and you do it, period? Or is it something that you've done in reaction?
Oh, I mean, you know that there are people who would rather watch more of a news-driven topic of the day type show, and those are definitely out there. And occasionally I try to do those if there's a very important topic, say a presidential election coming up or an important Supreme Court decision. Well, certainly we're probably going to talk about that. Or why didn't you talk about that? Sometimes I'll see it out in the chat. Why aren't we discussing this? And it's like, well, okay, you're right. Let's talk about this. And we'll swing right that way. I do pay attention to what's out there in the chat. And if what I'm doing is not working, which sometimes it doesn't, open discussion sometimes doesn't work. Nobody has anything to talk about. So I look for stuff like that out in the text chat. So it's important that guys throw ideas out there and stuff like that. It's like Travis said, people start feeling ignored. I know from a standpoint of watching other people's shows, I don't like it when my comments aren't at least being acknowledged. That's why I try to put most of the major ones on the screen so we can read them out loud and maybe talk about them and stuff like that, because that way the people out in the chat sort of get to be part of the show. Because somebody who's watching replay on a phone, they probably might not even have the text chat up. They're just watching what's on screen and stuff like that. So I want people to see that on the screen right along with everything else. So it is panel driven on Friday nights, but we have audience input, and very rarely I have had people email me topics. Hey, could we talk about this evening? And I've done that. Or send me links to a news story and say, here's a possible topic for Fowl Territory. And we'll go there. So any and all of the above. So
you kind of addressed it, but Travis's full comment there, and I'll just read it since that's kind of the point of what we're talking about at this moment, is Travis' comment is, I enjoy the fact that certain shows like Gizzard does stay pretty fluid and the audience engagement is great. Many shows will go for long periods of time without bringing in viewer comments and people start feeling ignored, like you said. So that's that comment. Woods is saying that he agrees with Travis 100%. What you're talking about is addressing comments, and I guess technically we're talking about reading the comments instead of just addressing them. I still wrote this comment down that I'm going to get to here, but as I wander back to that comment, I think this is part of it, and or at least it's something that as you answered it, as you addressed Travis's comment right there, I thought of it. When you have a panel like you host on your Friday night shows, and then depending on who all shows up on Sunday, but when it'll occasionally turn into a panel or it'll be a few people, but either way, the panelists in a way are surrogates. Is that the right word? For the people in the audience who are in the text chat and participating. So, there's somebody that's going to be paying attention to something. For me, my eyes are going to go to AK-47. So if somebody starts talking about AK-47 stuff, and everybody's talking about pistols or something, 9mm or something, I'll probably be the one to be like, hey, there's an AK-47 question out there, right? So there's that element. And so it's people, like you say, you create and we talk about the environment you've created, and that's a portion of it that's difficult to describe, or the reason that we take some time to describe it here, because that's an element, right? Like the people that are in the text chat, the people that are in your panel, because of the way the world works and the technology is, it can only hold so many people. So those people are pretty much, we're all just sitting there. If I'm on a panel or if I'm in the text chat, we're all just sitting there in the same room. It's just that a certain number of the people are live. And usually it's because they've got something to share with their camera or something to say, and it's a lot easier to say it than to type it all. But they're watching what's in the chat, and the chat is, it's like having, I don't know, it's at least a half of the discussion, right? If not, sometimes 60% of the discussion, and the panelists are just there to react to the conversation that's happening in the text, right? I don't want to say it's completely text driven, like you say, it's panel driven, but it's like a participatory situation that nobody, it's not like you're the only one doing that, but very few people actually spend that much time involved with the conversations. Now, if you were at a scale, I don't know, maybe ask it this way. Obviously, at some time, some amount larger scale, you'd no longer be able to read the chat. How big do you think or what do you want to say? Like, how many people do you think it would be before it was no longer viable to run it the way you run it? Have you ever thought about that?
Well, not really. My channel has grown slowly over time, but yeah, it hasn't been a problem so far. Yeah, where it gets to the point where I would have literally 100 or more people in the live chat at once, then it becomes very hard to manage all that. You have to kind of pick and choose, whereas I usually have the opportunity, because the questions come in slowly enough that I can, easily parse through them pretty much all the time anyway, and get everybody's question on there. Not that I don't want to get bigger. I mean, obviously, anybody who runs a YouTube channel, you appreciate new people subscribing. You appreciate being in demand, and a lot of people thinking your channel's great and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. But on the other hand, I appreciate the intimacy that we can have with a smaller audience right now. But I mean, just to go back real quick and touch on something you were talking about, people asking questions out of the chat. Well, the great thing about having something like Fowl Territory, if somebody asks a question, say, well, I've got an eye on this particular hunting rifle, it's blah, blah, blah caliber. You think this would be good for hunting deer? Well, I don't hunt deer, so I couldn't intelligently answer that question. But somebody on my panel, there's a pretty good chance somebody on my panel does hunt deer and can speak to that. Somebody probably owns that very rifle or has experience with somebody who does and can tell you, yeah, that'd be great, or no, you really ought to go with, something else. So, I mean, you rely on your panelists as part of your expanded brain. So,
and then to elaborate on that, and I'm sure you've seen this over, after I don't know how many chats it takes for that, you kind of alluded to it before, but people come and go, and people are interested and disinterested, life changes, ability to be part, as long as you have something consistent over time, people are going to come, but then come back, or I should say come and go, but then come back often, or not often, but occasionally, whatever, depending on audiences and stuff. So you've been around enough to see that kind of fluctuation. I was setting that up to say something, and I've lost it again. So I'm trying to keep track of too many things. I don't want to forget, or I don't want to run out of time before we address some of the comments that I starred earlier. Sure. But I do want to get into the how, because you definitely use the StreamYard as the tool, which you were one of the first to do it. I know you're a beta tester, so you were one of the people to lead the way at a time when YouTube got sick of providing the tools to stream live for free, and everyone was looking for alternatives, and there was a couple of different options, and none of them were obvious. And the people that were making decisions weren't all doing the same thing in the same way. So it wasn't, there was no easy, obvious decision. And your participation and involvement, and then sharing your experiences there, I don't know if you realize how big a piece you played in that whole thing for a lot of people who were, transitioning through many things. And then the live stream technology was just a portion of it. But, and again, that's just one of the things. You also use Macs, I think, right? And iPhones?
Yes, I do.
So, and you're able to deal with it. Like I had to ask, because sometimes when people are Mac people, you know it because they're always talking about it, but you're comfortable enough and competent enough with it that, you know, you're keeping up with everybody else and never using Mac as an excuse, nor holding it over everybody. You know, you're just there, whatever. And that's I think that's an accomplishment or something that people overlook or don't even pay attention to. But then, so the how part of it is going to, you know, you've got lots of stuff we could talk about how, but I do want to hit some of these. Some of these are just statements. I'm just going to read them so that, you know, in the theme of addressing the comments. Travis followed up with, Gizzard also has a great panel. Snob and obnoxious lighten up the conversation. Rich and the others put more insight and opinion, so the balance works out real well. There's some of these, like I say, were just statements. I just wanted to throw them out there because Woods threw out earlier that Gizzard's a great classy guy that brings new folks often. So many gun channels can be intimidating, but Gary is none of that. Very relatable. And if you feel like addressing these, feel free. I don't want to rush through them, but honestly, if Gary's on a panel, his show or not, I'd much be more likely to watch. And I think I agree with those sentiments. Usually you don't stick around for stuff that's just lame or heinous or useless. So I use you as a barometer as well. If you're there, then I'm like, oh, it's probably valid.
Thank you.
Ozzy's saying, I still remember the very first test show. And it's always neat to be able to be part of projects like that. Definitely. And projects that are at a scale where you can still say, I remember the first one, where it wasn't like an engineered thing where you showed up for work one day and like 4 technicians set it up. So why would you remember? You know what I mean? It was just another day at work. Like when a human is actually doing something for the first time and is this mic on type of stuff, like just neat to be part of all that for people that are interested.
Yeah, I remember that show because I was on the air for a minute or two talking. All of a sudden I saw guests popping into the text chat and it's like, oh, wow, there are people watching. And after a while, somebody asked for a link. So I threw the link out there just to see if anybody would jump in. Alan B. Pro was the first one to ever jump into that discussion. Before you know it, I had 3 or 4 different people on there, and I was essentially running a show at that point. And it's like, oh, wow, I can do this, and this is fun. I enjoy it, and the audience is enjoying it too. I could do this more often. And as you do it more and more, you get more and more comfortable, especially when people come back. I mean, if they didn't like it, they wouldn't come back. And, you know, the long term would have never happened. But obviously, you get confidence with every time you successfully pull it off.
And you create an opportunity for people to find it. Every time you add another one to the mix, you know, it's a bigger target for people to find. More people find it. The mechanisms start to work, and people that like stuff, the people that appreciate the same kind of content as your viewers get told about your content because there's trend and there's, you know, not viral, but, you know, it goes towards, you know, viewer and all that stuff. So, yeah, that stuff is, I don't get off topic here. So then Wood says 2018 is when he joined gun channels. I guess I probably should have read that earlier because I'm not sure what he was talking about there. He also followed up with, I'm one of those Sunday guys who listen and do other stuff. I think it was 2AEDU through Clover some scratch earlier during his live show while 2AEDU was mowing the lawn. So yeah, there's a lot of folks that will, especially the long format stuff, that will listen to the stuff while they're doing tasks or on the job or driving, right? So, well,
which is why I almost never have a camera on when I'm doing the early bird chat, because I don't intend for it to be a visual type show. It's more of a let's hear voices, let's talk. I mean, if people on the panel want to turn their camera on, they're welcome to, but that's not what it's about. We aren't, you know, it's not a visual show. It's not geared that way. Now, occasionally if somebody sends a picture of this holster or this gun, we'll put it on the screen, but that's not really what we do on Sunday mornings.
I don't want to go on too many tangents, but yeah, that's a great point. And then again, that adds to the environment that you're creating by that simple decision, I guess, right? That simple action of not using the camera, then it just changes it into more of a audio experience.
Right. It's more of a really long extended podcast, but it's really not, because it's not topic driven. It's just a discussion. So it's kind of unique in that it's just a place where people come together and then the discussion goes where the discussion goes. So I feel like my show's a little bit unique in that aspect, and I like that because then I'm not copying anybody. It's totally my own creation.
Oh, and it's not just authentic in the fact that, like, not except for Knives and Pink, nobody really did that or does that, and nobody is doing it right now. But you, by creating that destination and being consistent with your time and doing it on a regular basis, then people know that they have a place to go to bring, question, show off something, listen to on the drive here. Like, okay, if I'm gonna need to do a 4-hour drive, why not do it the 4 hours that Gizzard will be live? Or why don't I do it the 4 hours after, because I know I can listen to the fresh Gizzard show. So there's that ripple, I don't know what to call it, like the consequence of doing something on the regular for not just the audience, but the audience that knows they can be there next week and that kind of thing. And there's a lot for that. That's what creates community, because anybody can flash down something on the regular. Anybody can produce videos and drop them on the regular. That don't create community. That just creates a bunch of people that know when to show up to watch something and maybe comment or whatever. So without getting too much, because we're getting towards the hour here, do you mind if we go over a little bit? Or?
No, I don't mind.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'm trying not to make it a marathon thing, so I'll try to keep it at 90, 60, whatever, 90, an hour and a half. As you posted earlier, I work second shift, so I miss out most of the Fowl Territory live, but I'm almost always there for the early birds. And I guess that's something that, well, first, Ozzy's awesome, so thanks for that comment. But I guess that's the other thing about having one show at 9 p.m. and one show at 9 a.m. is that you cover folks that can get to one or can't get to one or the other, or vice versa or whatever.
Well, that and the fact that we cover 4 hours means I'm starting. Let's see, I'm starting at 9 o'clock local time, which means it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast, 7 o'clock on the West Coast. So I'm getting people at different times of the day. When the people on the West Coast are getting up and getting their breakfast, I'm usually well into the show at that point, where a lot of the people on the East Coast might drop off halfway through because they're going to have their lunch or whatever. And so the audience changes from the beginning to the end of the show. So there's opportunity for people in all parts of the country to jump in, at their particular time that they've got a few minutes free. It's not uncommon to, have them come in for half an hour and say, okay, I got to go. And that's exactly what it is. It's an open door. Come in when you want to, leave when you want to or have to, come and go. So I like that aspect of it.
Right on. And again, having something like that people know is there, right? That's how traditions, that's how communities built.
Right.
So then I don't know which one of these to ask first. So I guess I still haven't figured it out. I'll just ask this one. It's definitely a how question, and I don't know if it's going to be a long or an easy answer at this point, because you've been doing this for a while. But my next one I know is going to potentially be a longer one or a more difficult one to answer. So the first one I'll ask is, how much time do you prep for a live stream after 170 shows on the one and 134 on the other? However many years that is at this point.
Well, there's probably just from the technical aspect of it alone, there's probably about a half hour for each show by the time you're going in and setting up the live stream in StreamYard, going in and making sure all of the crawls that you got going across the bottom of the screen are updated with the proper information. For example, Fowl Territory, 1 week I'm giving away a prize package from Aegis Gun Care, the next I'm not. So I got to make sure I have everything lined up for the right prompts. And I've got to make my thumbnails, which I do in Canva. I basically have the same thumbnail that I just open up and change the number each week for the most part. With Fowl Territory, I have 2 different thumbnails because one has Aegis Gun Care and the other one does not. And occasionally, if it's a holiday, I'll make something special up with maybe, 4th of July might have fireworks, or Christmas might have Santa Claus, or, et cetera, et cetera. But so you got to design the thumbnail and get it ready. Usually that's real quick, but not always. Get StreamYard ready, get everything scheduled in StreamYard, which I basically try to copy the previous week's description out of YouTube. I go to YouTube Studio, select all, and copy, and then paste it. And once again, change whatever. If there's a reference to the specific show number, I change that, change the date, and make sure everything's up to date. And then basically post it on YouTube and Facebook. It does it all at once, which is kind of nice. You only have to set up the show once, and it posts to whatever 3 platforms you want to go to.
You're talking setting it up in StreamYard, right?
In StreamYard, yes. Because I do stream to multiple platforms. I have not a lot of people, but a handful of people who watch on Facebook, for example. And there's always a potential of getting new people there also. Because,
right, when you stream to 3 sources or 3 destinations, I guess. So in other words, Gizzard will go to StreamYard, which is a browser, it's a website, it's a destination you go to online. You go to that website, you're logged in, you create this broadcast. He's describing that he's going to have that broadcast streamed to 3 different destinations: YouTube, Facebook, and then Twitch or something else.
It was Twitch. I've been doing Twitter recent weeks, but you can only have, on my plan, you can only go to 3 destinations. So you basically tell it, okay, you click this button for YouTube, then you click the Facebook icon, then you click the Twitter icon. And so it knows when it sets this up, it's going to push this to all 3 platforms at once. And then you set up the title and description and the thumbnail, and it does the rest.
Just to hit that more, you're only going to have 1 broadcast. It's just that now you're going to have it going out, distributed to 3 platforms. And then when it's over, what I was going to get at is when it's over, those Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube each end, and then take your live stream and render it into a regular video. So now you have a video on YouTube, you have a video on Facebook, and a video on that 3rd platform, because that's a service that we pay, what, $25? You're paying the $25 a month for StreamYard?
Yeah, I've got the yearly plan, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm paying for it monthly. He's paying for it yearly. It's like $20 a month probably when you're paying for it yearly.
Yes, that's correct.
So basically we're paying a couple of bucks, but we're getting a service, and that service gives us these 3 streams. But that's the reason to do it. One, you get that audience immediately, and then now you've got a content. That content that was created on YouTube is over there. So now you've got a thing that's planted over there because it's a video, and it's there for people to watch if they want. But they're watching majority of interaction on YouTube. So for people that have never been on YouTube, oh, that's what YouTube's like. And for people that hate YouTube, it's a way for them to experience it without having to go to the place they hate. So, it's in the format they're used to on the platform they like, but they get to experience it. So you're everything that we just talked about times 3. So come on.
And if you highlight the YouTube comments and put them on the screen, that gives the opportunity for the Facebook people to see them too. Because remember, they can't see the YouTube chat. Yeah, and vice versa. Yeah, we get comments from Facebook too. And I want everybody to be able to see it, even the folks that are watching out on Twitter where there is no text chat. But they can see the highlights because I put them on a screen. That's important, I think.
And you see them too. So now that, and then the other thing is, I don't know if you do this, but this is a little technical thing just to follow up on that. So Gizzard sets up StreamYard, gets it all set up, says it's going to stream to 3 destinations, does his show. It's a long format, 4-hour show. So he doesn't have to record anything on his computer. If he wants to, StreamYard would technically drop another copy on his computer, but I doubt he's that crazy. But you basically stream to these 3 platforms. It becomes rendered as video on those platforms. Now you could go grab the audio, or you could probably tell StreamYard to pull audio and then take that audio from one of the streams or from your own computer or whatever that you got, and then push that up to a whole nother system of distribution called podcasts, right? And you've got Spotify and iHeartRadio and iTunes and whatever else is out there now. and you take that audio version, dress it all up with a description and a thumbnail and all the other things that you would for a video, and send that out. Now, do you do all that layer on your shows also?
I do not, but I've given it serious thought. Now, the problem is most of my shows are a little bit long for podcast form. Typically, those are, I mean, some are 2 hours, but most of the time we're talking an hour or just over. And a lot of what I do, especially on Fowl Territory, the second half of the show where I display Gorn, that would be totally useless to a podcast audience for the most part. So you would probably want to do the first half of the show as your podcast.
Yeah, and that would make it shorter and more appropriate. Now, is that something you do as a project or do because there's a payoff or a benefit, or what would
the
be
podcast?
If you were to do all that, or
if I was to do it, it would just be to expand the audience. I consume podcasts, so there's a value to that. It's very handy for driving, or a lot of people like to play them at night and stuff like that when, and
it takes like 3 steps out of it. They don't have to find your YouTube and play it or take the audio and play it. They can just go to their favorite podcast, subscribe, and it's there for them.
Mm-hmm. And and it could, if you have people who listen to the podcast, it's like, oh, this is live on YouTube also if I wanted to see it when it really happens. So maybe I'll go check out the YouTube version of it someday. Then, it's just a way of expanding your audience.
Okay, and then now, so in an effort to not keep it going on forever, because that's the distraction or the disadvantage of doing it late, is I definitely can't run it late, right? Unless a person's a night owl. So it would be rude, and I don't want to keep you up all night. One of my bigger questions was kind of earlier. You mentioned you'll pause, and if somebody asks a question, you want to make sure to pause and address the question, and make sure that if it's something that they might have for follow up, make sure it's threshed. I mean, you'd say exactly like that, but I know what it's like when you're doing the show, so that if there's somebody doesn't get overlooked or brushed aside because of the banter from either something that isn't like cheesecake or whatever, or talk about cereal that morning or whatever, or maybe just a bunch of people that are friends joking with each other, and we just don't recognize or see that somebody new has asked a legitimate question or something. So you're not the only show, but you're definitely one of the shows that will make a point to address those questions and bring them up on the screen, like you mentioned, and for all the different reasons we said before. So my question is, and I kind of was getting into this before when I talked about you've been around with 170 shows on your Friday, 170 episodes on your Friday show, 134 episodes on your Sunday show. You've been through that evolution of people who have come along and really been part of your show, and then they're gone, and then they're back, and then they're gone, and then you figure out they're on some kind of cycle, right? We got a friend from Canada who's usually does long tours on different jobs, and then he comes back, and then he's there for a week or two full time because he's off, between job cycles, and then he's gone for 6 months. We find people are in schedules. We used to have people on oil rigs that would watch our stuff, and they'd be around for a while and be real active and then be gone. So with that kind of stuff going on, and if it's possible for you to keep track of all this and be aware of this, or if you've even had it on your radar, those people that you've paused and paid attention to, have you paid attention to how many of them have stuck around, become part of the community, become content creators, acknowledge, like, thank you for doing that, like, I'm here because of Gizzard, like, do you pay attention to that at all? I know there are there. You must acknowledge that they're there. I just don't know if you're even paying attention or trying to.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've got people out there. This one guy that he jumps in, and he's I think 19, 20 years old, and he was completely a novice to firearms and stuff like that, and he will just ask a question, which I do love. If he's got a question, he just comes right out and blurts it out, and we answer it for him and stuff like that. And he thanks us. I've had him send me emails and tell tell me how much I appreciate it. Those are really awesome, by the way. When somebody sends you an email after the show and say, thanks for answering my question. I really appreciate being made part of the show or whatever. And they usually do come back over and over again. And then after a while, you'll watch them evolve. And much like me, I started out in these shows not being able to answer very many questions for other people because they all knew more about firearms than me. But you pick things up over time and you learn, and then you can be part of the knowledgeable people in the show, and you can give your opinion and help answer questions. So people transform from first-time participants to actually part of the answer bank, if you will. We have those out in the chat. People out in the chat answer questions too. So it's fun to watch them come in and be new and then stick around and be part of the old hat after a while. And that's pretty satisfying to know that you helped them become comfortable being part of the community, the same way somebody did me many years ago. All I want to do is kind of give back, like I got when I first came in. That's my that's what I want to do in a nutshell.
Yeah, right on. We didn't really talk about it. You were around guns your whole life, or got into guns as a adult?
Well, that's kind of a two-part question. See, my dad hunted, and so I've had a shotgun since I was 14 years old, but that's all we had basically is shotguns. And then Dad had an old antique 22 rifle that he brought back from World War II. Occasionally we would shoot that, but we never hunted with it. So firearm ownership for me was shotguns up until I was 45 years old.
Somewhere like sporting good and tool.
Right. And the thought of owning something for my own protection, the thought of having the right to do that or even wanting to, never crossed my mind until I said 45, actually it's 55. I misstated there. And just to keep this from being a long drawn out story, I think most of them have heard it, was my daughter got the idea that she wanted to buy a handgun, but she didn't know what kind to buy and wanted me to help her out with some advice. Me not knowing anything, I go on Google, I go on YouTube, I start consuming stuff and maybe come up with an opinion or two. We ended up picking out a Taurus TCP for her, and she wanted to know if there's a gun range nearby. So I found one and took her to it so we could shoot her new gun. And well, she put a couple magazines through it, and then she handed it to me. She said, "Here, you want to try it?" So I picked it up and fired a few shots from it. And I was pretty instantly hooked at that point. I said, I got to get me one of these. And so I ended up buying pretty much the exact same pistol. And that got me started. And then friends at work were telling me about, this was a 380, of course. They said, well, you ought to try 9mm. That's fun too. Well, do they have one of those at the store? Well, they did. That didn't cost me too much money. So before long, I had two guns. Then, other things. You watch Yankee Marshall back then. He was big into revolvers. It's like, I've never shot a revolver. Maybe I'd like a revolver. Let's buy a revolver. And so before you know it, you've got this, and this, and it kind of leads to itself. And then once you become part of that community, then you start getting on the forums and you read parts about Second Amendment and stuff, which I'd never considered. You mean somebody wants to take my guns away? You mean rules are different in different states? And
on the forums, it was probably more nuanced than just the send us some funding or talk to your congressman urgently, or like one of those, I don't want to say, but like some of the advertising / marketing we're going to get from an organization. The forums are more individuals having discussions or pleas or links, right? It was more nuanced than just your, our rights.
Yeah, and that kind of went to heart with me. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I didn't even realize. I knew the Constitution said that. I didn't realize the impact of those words. I hadn't looked at, the founding fathers and, all the discussion in drafting the Bill of Rights and stuff like that, and why that was there and the purpose of it and everything. And the more and more I thought about it, it's like, okay, I've got to be part of this too, because this is, pretty important to me. And so I came to that. I wasn't always a big Second Amendment advocate. I wasn't always a gun nut. I've evolved into that sort of thing because, as with a lot of things I get into, if it's something that really interests me, I want to be part of it. So that's kind of how I got there. But it was an evolution for sure.
That originally came from me asking, your situation as a gun owner, because I didn't want to take for granted that everybody just knew your story or whatever. So again, somebody who grew up in a family that had guns around, but again, like a tool or like a hunting implement, let's call it a sporting good or whatever. It's not like you sustenance farmed, or hunted, but I'm sure it was, an occasional yearly event or maybe a predator thing or whatever, just the occasional use or whatever. But then as you got older, you started to become more interested, and then once you were interested, you got into the community. So when you mentioned you wanted, in a nutshell, at the end of your comment before, you said you wanted to be like what the help, or how am I saying this right? You wanted to help like the help you got.
Right.
Do you mean like technically the inspiration, like the facilitation, and I guess if it's I'm leaving it open, I guess, intentionally, so if we're getting late, so you don't necessarily have to go off on too many of this, but trying to be open. What did you mean by be like or to be a help like what you got? In what way? Which kind of help are you attempting to offer?
Well, it's a combination of all those things. I mean, I want to help somebody gain knowledge on firearms. I also want them to feel comfortable talking about firearms and realize that we can come together and have fun talking about firearms. You can meet people, you can make friends and totally immerse yourself in this community as deeply as you want to. I've seen people come into chats as commenters, and then after a while, next thing you know, they've got their own YouTube channel and they're making videos. And it's like, I remember that evolution. I remember how that happened. So I led somewhere where somebody led me. That's to being welcomed in a community where you felt like not only could you watch and consume and be part of it, but you could actually become. People will help you if you want to record videos, if you want to know how to do a live stream. There are people who will help you do that. And people helped me along the way. I certainly didn't come into this knowing all this stuff. I was totally green. And thanks to, people like John Z, I explained, who taught me how to do a live stream. And people who taught you how to ask questions, who taught you the difference between semi-automatic, this is a revolver. What's the difference? What's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? Typical magazine size. Why do you want more mag capacity and stuff like that? Well, this is why and stuff. Stuff that you never think to ask, but you learn all these things, and you also enjoy doing it because it's friendly people out there who, like I say, a lot of times they'll become friends. And eventually, if you're lucky like me, you'll actually get to meet some of them, and they'll become actual real-life personal friends who you look forward to seeing a few times a year and shaking hands or, whatever. There are good friends I've made because of what I do.
Well, I tell you what, that's a great transition to kind of start wrapping it up. I'm not going to promise it'll be wrapped up immediately, but we're going to start wrapping it up for sure. But I potentially have you on in a bit not immediately, because I do want to have other people on to interview like this, but to talk about travel and industry, because you've been involved in a bunch of the gun channel stuff plus other stuff, and we really only talked about the live streaming and the conversations that you host. So if you don't mind, some kind of leaving it undetermined at some point in the future coming back on.
Oh yeah, because we could talk about all that. Getting to attend gun shows, getting to attend industry events and stuff like that, 2A rallies and stuff like that, and it's just incredible, especially getting to meet some of the bigger names and stuff like that, and getting to talk to them personally and stuff like that. It's an experience like no other, definitely.
So then I'm going to go back and, well, thank you again for jumping on, because this is late and I didn't set it up at all. So I appreciate you just being on the ball to talk about all this. And like I say, I guess I was also going to mention the tech side of it. And so if we definitely chat again, we might end up having a third chat if we ever get into tech side of it, depending on how much we chat about the travel, because there's quite a bit of travel stuff that you've done and we could chat about.
Yeah, I'll be glad to come back whenever you want to have me.
And then I just wanted to ask this one. I just don't want to, I'm thinking I'm forgetting something. So while you answer this one, maybe I'll remember the other one I want to ask. But one of the things I think is cool about the Friday show, and I don't know the origin story of it, but I'm going to ask you what the origin story is of the What You Learned. How Gary concludes the show by going around the room and asking the panelists what they've learned. And I think that's one of the coolest aspects of a live chat. What's the origin story?
That was actually suggested by somebody on the panel, as I recall. I'm thinking Sarge, but I'm not 100% sure. But somebody brought it up in the pre-chat before we started the show. You ought to, towards the very end of the show, do a what did you learn, and just have people, go through and say what they found out that they didn't know, because even though you have panelists on your show and they're all fairly knowledgeable for the most part about firearms, they're probably going to learn something, that's just being part of the discussion and stuff like that. So it's a good opportunity for somebody to say, I never knew this, but I found this out tonight, blah, 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 blah. And it helps to acknowledge other people who brought new ideas into the show and stuff like that. And it's just kind of a great little summarized topic at the end. Here's what I got from this show and stuff like that. And I like it, so we kept doing it. That's why we do it. Wasn't my idea originally.
Well, but it was your idea to keep it as a part of the show, make a graphic for it. And again, once you have that tradition, that element, now everybody in the show is at least aware that it's coming, if not thinking about it, and giving everybody more to think about, and adding a whole nother dimension and layer to it. Really think that's cool. Ozzy threw a comment out here towards the end here. After a time, it's like a weekly family reunion, and in a way,
it really is.
It's kind of like that show Cheers, but I guess that's dated because nobody's that old. Plus, they had to watch the show. I can't, but it's the idea of a pub or a gathering place that people come to on their own, like not a work environment or something where you're obligated to go, or like a sports thing where you're going as an audience, but you don't have any idea who's going to show up next to you. It's more like a pub or a club or something where you go intentionally, and that's what I was looking for. So the people that show up, you're not forced to be there. You're not paying nothing to be there. So you're there if you want to be. And if the conversation that's happening there isn't your style, nobody's forcing you to be there, right? So, it's not like I was, you're a spectator of something and somebody sits down loud next to you, then you're maybe just not going to have a conversation. You're just going to let them be loud. Like, it's not that kind of an environment.
And we like to, as they say in the theme song for Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Well, I always do a roll call at the beginning of the show, and I will speak all the names out loud of the people who are in the chat, and then I try to catch them as they come in and say hi, because I want to say hi to you. I want you to acknowledge I see you. You're there. Welcome to the show. it kind of gives them that personal touch. It's like I didn't just pop in and he didn't notice me. He noticed me. And hopefully, I think people like that. So, yeah, in that respect, we're going to get to know your name. So,
and the thing is, it's not a requirement either, because anybody can watch the show, and by not commenting, you're not necessarily going to be acknowledged. Or if you don't ask a question, somebody can say, "Hey, thanks for the show," and then never ask a question, never like be. Sure. You're not going to get the spotlight on you on, if you don't want it, in other words. But yeah, the people that do want to stick their toe in the water or just participate at the level of being in a text chat, which is super functional, like super easy to deal with. You could be doing other things. You could literally be in other channels, other shows. There's lots of benefits there. And again, creating a place for that is pretty cool. And you also not just facilitate it, like you're not just doing 4 hours, 6 hours every week, to have the show. But again, you're creating a place where you're acknowledged in the chat and all that, so that it's, again, 4 hours of interaction instead of just 4 hours of observation or audience, unless they want to be. Which again,
right, of course,
it's not like mandatory. You don't have to sign in or check in. But again, the family thing I think Ozzy's talking about is all the people that do say, "Hey, I'm here," and everybody says, "Hey," whatever. Or like, my style is to go, "Hey, everybody," once, and then not say it a million times. Other people are down for saying it a million times, which either way, honestly, who cares? Because it just makes a bunch of comments on the person's feed. So I only don't dig it beyond my shows because I can't keep track. I can't read that fast, and it's too much stuff to read. But, when you're the host, when I'm not the host, I care less. But, what I'm saying? Like, if you're the whoever's chat it is, when you're saying hello to each other, that's just a whole bunch more text chats. So the system, the mechanism behind it is thinking, hey, these people are talking to each other. This is an interactive chat. Let's maybe throw it ahead of the one over here that's sitting there like a dead fish, or the one that has no, just people watching. So anyway, so I think, it's cool that
that if you want to be noticed, if you want your question answered, we're gonna answer. We're not just gonna ignore you because we don't know who you are. That's not gonna happen. We're gonna get to know who you are.
And I think another element of what Dowsy's saying here is that it's not like you've got to sit there and raise your hand and then ask your question and then wait and then raise your hand again. There's a whole bunch of conversation happening. You don't foster, or you don't create some kind of environment where everybody's encouraged to just sit there minding their business unless they've got a question. They're chatting with each other. And I was going to ask this question earlier, and I didn't want to get too much into it, but for a future show or a discussion for a future day or something, I was going to ask if you think that the individuals are getting more, I don't want to say competent, just more capable, or whatever the word is, of carrying on multiple conversations at once. Because one of the elements of being in a text chat is lag, and the idea that somebody's spouse yells at them and they have to leave for 5 minutes and come back, and in the meantime 6 or 8 other people are having conversations in the text chat. And it's back in the old days, people kind of got that because they were all coming from forums, but then there's been like waves over the years of like new people being introduced to YouTube, and they would take a while before they figured out the flow or the cadence, or I don't know what to call that, like pace of a text chat. And then it's not like there's a pace of a text chat. Like on a very popular chat that everybody's an audience, you're going to get no way to communicate. But on a very slow, intimate chat, everybody's having conversations with each other. So, I think in from my perspective or whatever, my opinion, I guess, is that everybody's getting way more competent and able to deal with multiple threads happening in the text chat, because very rarely does somebody get confused and start misunderstanding and getting upset about something they think somebody said, but really they were addressing somebody else said. And you know what I mean? Like the misunderstandings that it seems like we don't even hardly get those misunderstandings anymore. I can't even use any examples because they happen so rarely. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's an evolution of all of us just being able to use the systems or the whatever, StreamYard or YouTube or whatever it is. We just are more familiar with it. And we're getting, the conversations are going further. So these family-like conversations can happen more. Like you can jump from Clover's chat to Gizzard's chat to Rick's chat to Travis's chat and still be talking about somebody's revolver, and everybody's understands what's happening, and nobody's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like am I over explaining it, or you know what I'm saying?
No, I think I totally understand what you're saying. And in that same vein, I think most people know that I don't tolerate abuse of other people on the chat, in my chats. If you've got a beef with somebody, take it somewhere else. If you're going to make derogatory comments towards other panel members, you'll probably either be timed out or perhaps banned. It has happened. People just come in and have vendetta with somebody. There's no place for that on my panel. That does not foster conversation. All that does is create chaos. And friendly banter is one thing. There's a lot of that out there too. People taking jabs at each other and stuff. If it's in fun, then it's in fun. But none of that. Let's be mean to somebody. Don't do it on my show. Let's put it that way.
All right, so then I won't keep you any longer. I do appreciate you jumping on again, and thanks for everyone who showed up and participated. And I'll give you as much time as you need here at the end, and we'll throw a commercial out there and wrap it up. Oh, and I also want to say thanks to Gizzard for being one of the folks who posts a link and often a commercial. You've gone to effort to create commercials for the gear website store. I've never paid Gizzard nothing, so I really do appreciate that. And much thanks for that.
Yeah, you bet. Let's see, closing words. I would just like, if you're new and you haven't checked out my shows, come watch Fowl Territory Friday nights at 9. Come watch the early bird chat on Sunday mornings. Stay, and if you like what you see, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe, and comment, as they say. If you're new, would like to have you there. We'll have fun. Trust me.
Right on. Thanks again. Get some sleep, and we'll see everybody. Whenever somebody's doing a chat again, probably tomorrow sometime. So I'll throw a commercial in here, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. So let us know what you think. We'll be watching the comments wherever you find the video, over on Gunstreamer.com or on GunTube.org. Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals of GunWebsites.com encourages you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching GunWebsites.com.